right, what is up, everyone? Let's get going. So, we're getting back with more creepypastas. I got recommended Laughing Jack, so I'm gonna do a reading of Laughing Jack and just like same kind of deal as with Jeff the Killer. I'm just gonna go along and like do some like critiques if I have any. Just give my overall opinion on the story. I will say right off the bat, just as a disclaimer, I meant to do this with Jeff the Killer, but I forgot. Hey, Scotty, thanks for dropping by. Appreciate it. I meant to do this with Jeff the Killer, but I didn't. But so obviously, the story is not my own. It's not my original work, or none of the written words are my own. The original author of the story is Snuffbox. Snuff Bomb. No, that's the author, Snuff Bomb. So again, not my original story. This is just meant for the purposes of critique and entertainment and stuff like that. So, oh, also, I forgot to mention on this website they have like overall ratings of the creepypastas, and apparently Laughing Jack has an overall rating of 8.93 out of 10, which based on 1,000 votes, almost 2,000 votes. Take that for what you will. I mean, Jeff the Killer had like I think about the same score. Like I think it was actually over like 9 point something out of 10. So I mean, take that with a grain of salt. But then again, just about anything could be better than Jeff the Killer. At least the original story, that is. I know that the revamped version is supposed to be a lot better than the original story, but. And like last time, I will warn you guys, this site is just fucking laggy as shit. So if I get interrupted in the reading and I have to like go back and find my place again, there you go. So we'll just get into this. In fact, actually, give me just 1 second here. Apologize for the interruption. I just realized that I was wearing a shirt with I just don't want to be wearing that shirt. It's got a logo of a store, corporation, whatever on it. So I don't know if it really fucking matters, but yeah, don't want to risk that shit. Okay, no problem. Appreciate it, Scotty. So we'll just get into it. So this is Laughing Jack, and again, like I've heard mixed things about it. I've heard good and bad, so we'll see how it is. And like I said, I'll just be giving my personal opinions and maybe like if there's any like criticisms that I have or whatever. So, all right. So Laughing Jack. It was a nice summer day. My 5-year-old son James was playing outside in the backyard of our suburban home. James has always been a quiet boy. He plays by himself mostly. He never had many friends, but he has always had a wild imagination. I was in the kitchen feeding our dog Fido when I heard what sounded like James talking to someone in the backyard. I'm not sure who it was he could be talking to. Could he have finally made a friend? Being a single mom, it's hard for me to always keep an eye on my son. Oh, give me just a second. It's being laggy like usual. All right. Being a single mom, it's hard for me to always keep an eye on my son, so I decided to go outside and check on him. So that's the opening. And then after that, it breaks. It's a paragraph. So sounds like me. So this is just a personal thing. Just a personal thing for me. The opening it seems somewhat generic to me. A little bit dry. Personally, I would prefer if there was like a hook at the beginning or something a little bit different, because the way that the story starts out, it seems very, very stereotypical to me. Um, but that's just a personal thing for me. I'm not saying it's bad necessarily. I'm just saying that this is just a me thing. So, because as bad as Jeff the Killer is and was, at least Jeff the Killer opened up with that, like with that news bulletin and stuff and everything, and gave you kind of like a glimpse of what was to come. But again, I mean, it's Jeff the Killer, so that's not me like putting this story down to lift up Jeff the Killer. I'm just saying that, like, for all the faults of that story, it like had a bit of a hook or something. So, but again, not saying it's anything like inherently wrong with it. I'm just saying that's a personal thing that I would prefer. So, when I went into the backyard, I was a bit confused because James was the only person back there. Was he talking to himself? I could have sworn I heard another voice. "James, it's time to come inside," I called out to him. He came inside and sat down at the kitchen table. It was about lunchtime, so I decided to make him a turkey sandwich. "James, who were you talking to out there?" I asked. James looked up for a moment. "I was playing with my new friend," he said, smiling. I poured him some milk and continued to pry, as any good mother would. Does your friend have a name? Why didn't you ask him to have lunch with us?" I asked. James stared at me for a moment before replying, "His name is Laughing Jack." I was a bit taken aback by what he said. It just says taken back. I think he meant taken aback. "Oh, that's a strange name. What does your friend look like?" I asked, a bit confused. "He's a clown. He has long hair and a big swirly cone nose. He's got long arms and baggy pants with stripy socks, and he always smiles." So, this is definitely like better dialogue for the kid than like the dialogue that like the author wrote in Jeff the Killer for the kid. Because remember in the beginning, like there was that dialogue for the little boy, and it sounded like nothing like how a boy would talk. So this is better, at least. This is a bit better. Little bit. I realized my son was talking about an imaginary friend. I suppose it is normal for kids his age to have imaginary friends, especially when he has no real kids to play with. It's probably just a phase. It's not a phase, Mom. All right, I'm sorry. The rest of the day went by as per usual, and it was starting to get late, so I put James to bed. I tucked him in, gave him a kiss, and made sure to turn on his nightlight before I closed the door. I was pretty tired myself, so I decided to go to bed not long after. I had an awful nightmare. And then it cuts there. So now we're going into the nightmare. The dialogue is good so far. Yeah, the dialogue's decent. It's better than the dialogue in Jeff the Killer, for sure. It was dark. I was in some kind of rundown amusement park. I was scared, running through an endless field of empty tents, broken down rides, and abandoned game huts. The whole place had a horrible look to it. Everything was black and white. The prize stuffed animals all hung from nooses in the game huts. Hey, Gage, what's up? Thanks for dropping by. We're just reading Laughing Jack. And we're at the part where the mom is going through, where we're being described the nightmare that the mom is having. Prepping dinner here. Nice. What you having for dinner? The prize stuffed animals all hung from nooses in the game huts, all with sick grins stitched on their faces. It felt like the whole park was looking at me, even though there wasn't another living thing in sight. Then suddenly, I began to hear music play. The sounds of Pop Goes the Weasel being played on a squeeze box echoed through the park. It was hypnotizing. I followed its tune to the circus tent almost in a trance. Unable to stop my legs from moving forward. It was pitch black. The only light came from a single spotlight shining on the center of the big top. As I walked toward the light, the music slowed down. I found myself singing along, unable to stop. see. Fuck. Give me a second. I apologize. Site's being fucking laggy as usual. Baked chicken and acorn squash. Ooh. All around the mulberry bush. The monkey chased the weasel. The monkey, though, 'twas all in fun. The music stopped right before its climax, and suddenly the lights shot on. The intensity of the lights was practically blinding. All I could see was a small dark silhouette shuffle towards me. Then another one appeared, and another, and another. There were dozens of them, all coming towards me. I couldn't move my legs. I couldn't move. Oh, wait, okay. I couldn't move. My legs were frozen. All I could do was watch as the haunting figures drew near. I feel like there could have been. Yes. I feel like there should have been a period after that, but that's just a slight thing. I could be wrong. It's me being a grammar Nazi. It refreshed the story against my will again, so give me just a second to find my place. I do apologize. A tweak here and there. Yeah. I mean, so far this is way better than Jeff the Killer. I know that that's like a pretty low bar to compare to, but still, it's refreshing. After reading Jeff the Killer. Let's see. All I could do was watch as the haunting figures drew near. More competently written piece. Very much so. Definitely. As they got closer, I could see they were children. As I looked at each one, I noticed they were all horribly disfigured and mutilated. Some had cuts all over their body. Others were severely burnt, and others were missing limbs, even eyes. The children enveloped me, clawing at my flesh, dragging me to the ground and tearing inside me. As the children tore me apart and I faded away, all I could hear was laughter. Horrible, awful, evil laughter. I woke up the next morning in a cold sweat. After taking a few deep breaths, I looked over and saw that a few of James's action figures were positioned facing me on top of my nightstand. I sighed. James had probably woken up early and put these here. I gathered up the toys and made my way to James's room. However, when I opened the door, James was sound asleep. So, yeah, definitely. I wonder if this author took inspiration from it, because it's got the whole clown thing going on. And we saw like the children, like the possessed souls, I guess, of children. So I bet the author probably did take inspiration from it. Willing to bet. I just shrugged and placed the toys back into his toy box and headed out to the living room. A little while later, James woke up and I made him his breakfast. Although the origin was more benign at first. Yeah. Woke up and I made him breakfast. He was quiet and seemed a bit groggy. Perhaps he didn't sleep well either. I decided to ask him about the toys. James, honey. There should have been a comma after James. James, honey, did you put the toys in Mommy's room this morning? His eyes shot up at me for a moment, then quickly glanced back down at his cereal. Laughing Jack did it. I rolled my eyes and responded, well, you tell Laughing Jack to keep the toys in your room. James nodded and finished up his breakfast, then decided to go play out in the backyard. I went to relax in the living room, and I must have dozed off because I woke up a couple of hours later. Shit, I need to check on James. I was a bit worried. It had been over 2 hours, it had been over 2 hours, and I haven't checked on him. I was a bit worried. It had been over, and I haven't checked on him. So I think it should. I think it should be hadn't, not haven't, uh, because I assume the story is being told in the past tense, not the present tense. Um, just a small thing again. I went. I wait. I went, stepped out into the backyard. I think it should just be I stepped out to the backyard. It says I went, stepped. I stepped out into the backyard, but James wasn't there anymore. I was getting nervous, so I called out to him, James, James, where are you? Just then I heard a giggle come from the front yard. I rushed through the gate around to the front of the house. James was sitting on the sidewalk. I breathed a sigh of relief and walked over to him. James, how many times have I told you to stay in the back? James, what are you eating? James looked up at me, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a handful of hard candies in all colors. This made me very nervous. James, who gave you that candy? James just stared at me, not speaking. James, please tell me where you got that candy. James hung his head down and said, Laughing Jack gave it to me. My heart sunk. I kneeled down to look him in the eye. James, I've had enough of this damn Laughing Jack thing. He is not real. Now, this is a very serious situation. I need to know who gave you the candy. I could see my son's eyes tear up. But Mama, Laughing Jack did give me the candy. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. James has never lied to me, but what he's telling me is impossible. I make him spit out the candy and I throw the rest away. James appears to be fine. She's a better parent than Jeff the Kills was. Yeah, much better. Oh my God. Much better parent than Jeff the Killer's mom was. I think the mom might have been a little bit unbalanced than Jeff the Killer. Let's see. Maybe I'm just overreacting after all. He could have gotten it from Tom and Linda from next door or Mr. Walker down the street. Either way, I'm going to have to keep a closer eye on James. That night, I put James to bed as usual and decided to go to bed early myself. Suddenly, I was woken up by a loud bang coming from the kitchen. I sprung out of bed and hurried down the stairs. When I got to the kitchen, I was horrified. Everything on the counters had been thrown on the floor, and our dog Fido hung dead from the light fixture. His stomach was cut open and stuffed with candy, the same type that James was eating earlier that day. My shock was quickly broken by a sharp scream coming from James's room, followed by loud crashes. I quickly grabbed a knife from the drawer. It just forwarded me when I got to the everything. Okay. Sorry about that. My shock was broken quickly by a sharp scream coming from James's room, followed by loud crashes. I quickly grabbed a knife from the drawer and moved up the stairs with the speed that only a mother whose child is in danger could have. I burst through the door and flicked on the lights. Everything in the room was knocked over and tossed on the floor. My poor son in his bed crying and shaking with fear. A pool of urine staining the sheets. I scooped my child up and ran out of the house and went next door to Tom and Linda's house. Luckily, they were still awake. Another slight grammatical mistake. There was the comma, and then the luckily was capitalized. It should have been lowercase. Again, so far, these are just like slight grammatical errors. That's really all there is to it. So I know that this isn't meant to be like a long story. So maybe this is, again, just a personal criticism for me, but I feel like everything is happening very, very fast. I don't know. Like I would like more, like a little more build up. It feels like everything is just like happening all at once, like very, very quickly. But again, that's just a personal preference. That's just me. So it's fairly all right so far. Everything in the room. I scooped my child up and ran out of the house. Yeah. They let me use their phone and I called the police. It didn't take them long to arrive, and I explained what had happened. And wait a minute. It didn't take them long to arrive, and I explained what had happened. They looked at me. So it should be, and when I explained what had happened, they looked at me as if I were crazy. It just says, and I explained what had happened. They looked at me as if I were crazy. They searched the house, but all they found was a dead dog and 2 trashed rooms. The officer told me that someone had probably gotten into the house and done this right before making a quick escape when they heard me coming up the stairs. Hey, Bunny Gathering, thanks for dropping by. Admittedly, I'm not super updated on creepypastas. Laughing Jack is certainly not one I'm familiar with. I'm not super familiar with Laughing Jack either. Like, I had heard of it before, but I never read it, so this is my first time reading it myself. So, basically, a much shorter version of, it's kind of like It, because the main antagonist is like a clown-like figure. So I'm guessing the author took a lot of inspiration from Stephen King's It. It's not the exact same, but it's giving me similar vibes. So far, it's also like much better than Jeff the Killer. Again, I know that's a low bar to set, but it's refreshing after having read Jeff the Killer. Reading a story that's better written and just better all around. The officer told me that someone had probably gotten into the house and done this right before making a quick escape when they heard me coming up the stairs. I knew it wasn't true. All the doors were locked, and none of the windows were open. Whatever was in my house didn't come from outside. The next day, and then it skips to the next day. So, did they just stay in the house? Anything better than Jeff the Killer? Yeah, pretty much. So wait, did they stay in the house? That's weird. It doesn't say if they stayed in the house or not. I would want to know if they stayed in the house after that. Children imaginary friend encrypted. Thanks, Gage. I appreciate that. Must have stayed in the house. Yeah, I feel like if something like that happened, like the officers, at the very least, they would like post like an officer there to like watch the house and stuff while they're in their house. It doesn't clarify if that happened or not, but I would hope they didn't stay in the house after that. But so that's one thing I wonder. Cops would boot you out for a few days for forensics. Yeah, that's true actually. So yeah, that's kind of one thing so far. The next day, James stayed inside. I didn't want him to leave my sight. I went into the garage and found his old baby monitor and set it up in his room if anything comes into it tonight. I was going to be able to hear it. I went to the kitchen and grabbed the largest knife from the drawer and put it on my nightstand. Imaginary friend or not, I'm not letting anything hurt my little boy. Soon enough, night came. I put James to bed. He was afraid, but I promised him that I wasn't going to let anything happen to him. I tucked him in, gave him a kiss, and turned on the nightlight. Before closing the door, I whispered to him, "Good night, James. I love you." I tried to stay up as long as I could, but after a few hours, I felt myself drifting off. Just a quick second. Officers will be guarding the scene. Yeah, definitely. My baby would be safe for the night, and I needed to sleep. Just as I lay my head on the pillow, I heard a soft noise come from the baby monitor I had put on my nightstand. At first, it sounded like interference, like the kind a radio would make. Then it turned into a soft moan. Was James asleep? Then I heard it, the laugh from my nightmare, that horrible laugh. I sprung up from the bed and grabbed the knife from under my pillow. I rushed over to James's room and creaked the door open. I tried the light switch, but it wouldn't come on. I took a step in, and I could feel the warm, thick liquid on my feet. Suddenly, James's nightlight came on, and I could see the absolute horror laid out in front of me. James's body was nailed up on the wall, the nails piercing through his hands and feet. His chest was cut wide open, and his organs hung down to the floor. Jesus. His eyes and tongue had been removed along with most of his teeth. I was disgusted. I could barely believe this was my baby boy. Then I heard it again, the soft, desperate moan. James was still alive. My baby, my poor baby, in so much pain, barely clinging to life. I ran across the room and vomited on the floor, but my sickness was interrupted by a horrible cackle coming from behind me. I spun around while still wiping bile from my mouth. Then out of the shadows emerged the fiend responsible for all this horror, Laughing Jack. His ghost white skin and matted black hair hung down to his shoulders. Going into Saw territory, yeah, basically. So wait, ghost white skin and matted black hair hung down to his shoulders. That sounds, who does that sound like? Who does that sound, who does that look similar to whom? Tell me. He had piercing white eyes surrounded by dark black rings. His twisted smile revealed a row of sharp, jagged teeth. And his skin didn't look like skin at all. It almost looked like rubber or plastic. He wore a patchy black and white clown outfit with striped sleeves and socks. His body itself was grotesque. His body itself. I don't think that's quite right, but whatever. Light from Death Note. Wait, are you thinking of Light or are you thinking of L from Death Note? I think you might be thinking of L. Or I could be wrong. I don't know. Let's see. His body itself was grotesque. His long arms hanging down past his waist and the way he was poised made him look almost boneless, like a rag doll. You're good, Scotty. That's what I figured you meant. He let out a sickening laugh as if to let me know he was pleased with my reaction to his work. He then turned around slowly in front of James and began to laugh even more at the horrific sight he has laid out. Well, that was enough. Again, the tenses switched again randomly. That was enough to shake me away from my terror. I snapped, "Get away from him, you bastard!" I rushed at the monster, raising the knife above my head and stabbed down at him. But as soon as the knife touched him, he disappeared in a cloud of black smoke. The knife passed right through and pierced James's still beating heart, splashing the warm blood on my face. No. What have I done? My baby. I killed my baby. I immediately fell to my knees and I could hear sirens in the distance growing louder. My boy. My sweet baby boy. I promised Mommy would protect you, but I failed. I'm sorry, James. I'm so sorry. Jack is a thing for irony. Apparently. Police soon arrived to find me in front of my son, still wielding the knife covered in my baby's blood. The trial was short. Insanity. I was placed in the Faripolos house for the criminally insane, where I have been for the past 2 months. It's not so bad here. The only reason I'm awake now is because someone is playing Pop Goes the Weasel outside my window. I'll talk to the orderlies about it in the morning. And that's the end. So, mocking her. Yeah, I think that's the idea. So that was Laughing Jack. I liked it, but I would have preferred more. I feel like it all happened so fast. I think the story could be fleshed out a little bit more. It's definitely a better story than Jeff the Killer for sure. But again, just my own personal thing. I would prefer if it was like fleshed out a bit more and like had a bit more build up, I guess. And Toby was pretty solid. Are you talking about is it Ticci Toby that you're talking about? Because I think I actually read that one a long time ago. Ticci Toby. But okay, but yeah, I could have done with more fleshing out of the story. Um, the mother I thought was a pretty well done character. James was kind of just like, you know, he was kind of just like every you know kid. Um, but he had character flaws, and the family had realistic issues. Oh, Toby. Yeah, I'll read that one next. I'll do Ticci Toby next because I think I read it once, like a long ass time ago. I don't remember much of it. I'll probably do Ticci Toby next. Um, Actually, technically, I could just do it. I could do it in the same stream, maybe. I don't know. Um, but yeah. So I mean, overall, definitely a better story than Jeff the Killer. Yeah, not read Ticci Toby. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I listened to it once or read it. It's like I said, it's been a long time. I know that I've heard of it. Don't know that I may have read it. Like I said, it's been forever. But yeah, so not a bad story. Again, I would have preferred, you know, for things to be, a little more fleshed out. I would like to know more about Laughing Jack. Because it seems like he kind of just appears. I mean, it's easy to figure out what he's all about, but it would be cool to get like a little bit more lore on Laughing Jack. And then the ending was pretty cool. I'll say that, like the ending where it kind of just like it one of those endings. Like I really like that. So not a bad story. Laughing Jack inspired by It and Death Note. Sounds about right. His origin was posted some time ago. Oh, all right. I'll have to check that out at some point. But I'm not saying that like a whole ass like origin story has to be put in the story itself, but it would just be cool like if the mother like did some investigating or something like that. But then of course that'd probably be a much longer story, so maybe that's understandable. But yeah. Also, I did a little like I looked up Laughing Jack because I was looking up the author so that way I could give credit to the author. And apparently, the author of Laughing Jack landed in some hot water. Uh, he got accused of some stuff. I don't know if the accusations were ever confirmed. I don't really want to go into that too deeply here, but I was looking it up, and apparently, he got accused of some stuff, which is unfortunate. So I don't know where he's at now. And the author is male, so that was confirmed. But yeah, he apparently got accused of like grooming and shit. So again, I don't know if that's confirmed or not. Not saying it is one way or another, but read that before I read the story, so that's again kind of unfortunate. But yeah, so I don't know. Maybe I'll give my phone a minute to rest here because this website, for some reason, it really it kind of fucks with my phone a little bit. So we'll give that a minute. Shame. Yeah, it's too bad because like the story that he wrote, it definitely has like a lot of potential. Like there's a lot of good in it, and he seems like he could be like a competent writer. It just needed some editing and stuff, and like a few critiques here and there. But it seemed like he had potential as a writer, but I don't know what ended up happening with him. So don't know if he's still writing or not. I know a bunch of people, uh, like a lot of teen girls like came out, and they're all around the same age. A lot of people came out and like were accusing him of stuff. And again, I don't know if any of this stuff was like ever like substantiated or confirmed. I don't want to say one way or another because I don't want to be accused of slander. But I mean, you can look into it for yourself. But yeah, so that really is too bad. So So yeah, I mean, maybe I can just read another creepypasta on here. Maybe I can do Ticci Toby, or I don't know. Should I do Ticci Toby on here, or should I save that for the next stream? Because I sort of want to just do one creepypasta. Yeah, please. Um, like do Ticci Toby in the same stream, or just save it for the next stream. If you have time, yeah, I got time because I planned on the stream going for like an hour and a half, maybe. So yeah, why not? Fuck it. Look up. I'm not even gonna try to look it up on this site. Fuck that. I'll just look it up. Just on Google or whatever. I don't know how long it is. I'm guessing probably longer than Laughing Jack. Right. So okay. Laughing Jack was 8 minutes of reading. This one is apparently 24 minutes of reading, so it's probably going to be a good deal longer, which is fine, you know. So let's see. So Ticci Toby has an overall score on the site of 9.10 out of 10. That's based on almost 3.5 thousand votes. Estimated. Oh, it says okay. Now it says 17 minutes. All right. Okay. So once again, what I'm reading here is not my own word. It's not my own original story. This is just meant for the purpose of critique and entertainment purposes. So I'll have to see who the author is at the end. Hopefully, the author of Ticci Toby hasn't gotten himself in hot water too. I don't know, because I know before in the last stream we were talking about Creeps McPasta and how he got himself into some shit. And then apparently the author of Laughing Jack also got himself into some shit. So it's like, fuck, you know? Both unfortunate. But yeah, so we'll do Ticci Toby. I just got to get myself a drink here. Right. All right, so this is Ticci Toby. Castaway. Oh, that's the author. Okay, so, all credit goes to the author, obviously. Yeah, Castaway or Castaway. I'll look it up on here just to be sure at the end. But yeah, so in case the author happens to come across this stream and try to say something, can't say I didn't credit them. So, all right. So this is Ticci Toby. The long road home seemed to go on and on. The road continued to stretch in front of the vehicle endlessly. The light that shone through the branches of the tall, green trees danced across the window in random patterns. And every once in a while, obnoxiously shining in your eyes. Every once in a while. It should be once in a while, not and a while. The surroundings were full of deep green trees forming a forest around the road. The only sound was the sound of the car's engine as it traveled down the path. It was peaceful and left a serene feeling. Although the ride seemed like a nice one, it lacked every form of nice from its two passengers. I'm digging the opening so far. I think this is a good opening. I think it's a little bit better than the opening for Laughing Jack. I like the description as well. Um, the middle-aged woman behind the steering wheel had neat short brown hair that fit her complexion quite well. Yeah, definitely agree. She wore a green V-neck T-shirt and a pair of blue jeans. Diamond stud earrings decorated each of her ears, which partially showed from behind her haircut. She had deep green eyes, which her shirt brought out, and the lighting seemed to make them more noticeable. There wasn't anything significant about her appearance. She looked like any other average mother you would see on TV shows and the like. However, the one thing that made her different than the average mothers was the dark bag she had under her eyes. Her facial expression was gloomy and sad, although she genuinely looked like someone who smiled a lot. She would sniffle every once in a while and occasionally glance in the rearview mirror to look at her son in the back seat, who was hunched over partially, with his arms held tight around his chest and his head pressed against the cold window. The boy lacked any normal appearance, and anyone could plainly see there was something wrong with him. His messy brown hair went every which way, and the luminescent lighting brought out his pale, almost gray skin. His eyes were dark, unlike his mother's, and he wore a white t-shirt and scrub pants that had been provided for him by the hospital. The clothes he had worn before were so shredded and bloodstained that they weren't wearable anymore. Um, the right side of his face bared a few cuts along with a split eyebrow. His right arm was bandaged all the way to the shoulder, which had been shredded when his right side hit the shattered glass. His injuries appeared to be painful, when in reality he couldn't feel anything. This was just one of the glories of being him. One of the challenges he had to face while growing up was growing up with a rare disease that caused him to be completely numb towards pain. Never before had he felt himself get hurt. He could have lost an arm and felt nothing. The other major disorder he had faced, which was the one that deemed him many insulting nicknames in the short time he attended grade school before he switched up to homeschooling, was his Tourette's syndrome, which caused him to tick and twitch in ways he couldn't control. He would crack his neck uncontrollably and twitch every once in a while. The kids would tease him and call him Ticci Toby, and they mocked him with exaggerated twitching and laughing. It got so bad he had to turn to homeschooling. It was too hard for him to be in a common learning environment with seemingly every kid poking, or more like stabbing, fun at him. Toby stared blankly out the window, his face empty of any emotion, and every few minutes his shoulder, arm, or foot would twitch. Every bump that the car tires hit would make his stomach turn. Yeah, Tiki Toby. That makes sense. I appreciate the origin of the actual nickname. Toby Rogers was the boy's name, and the last time Toby remembered riding in a car was when it crashed. Um, that's all he thought about, unconsciously replaying everything he remembered before he blacked out, over and over again. Toby had been the lucky one. His sister had not been so lucky. When the thought of sister came, he couldn't help the tears that welled up in his eyes. The horrible memories replayed in his mind. Her screaming that had cut off when the front of the car was smashed in. It all went blank for a moment before Toby opened his eyes to see his sister's body. Her forehead pierced with glass shards, her hips and legs crushed under the force of the steering wheel, and her torso pushed in from the too late inflated airbag. That was the last thing he had seen of his dear older sister. The road home continued on for what seemed like forever. It took so long to get home because his mom wanted to avoid the sight of the crash. When the surroundings gave way to a familiar neighborhood, they were both more than ready to get out of the car and step back into their own home. It was an older neighborhood with quaint little houses all next to each other. The car drove in front of a blue house with white window panes. they both quickly noticed that the old vehicle that was parked in front of the house and the familiar figure that stood in the driveway. Toby felt automatic anger and frustration take over him at the sight of his father. His father, who wasn't there. His mother pulled the car up in the driveway beside him before turning off the engine and preparing to step out and face her husband. Why is he here? Toby said quietly as he looked back at his mother, who reached to open the car door. He's your father, Toby. He's here because he wants to see you. His mother responded in a monotone voice, trying to sound less shaky. Give me just a second here. For fuck's sake. All right, so the site went full retard again, so give me just a second. I am intrigued so far, though. I do like the opening. I really dig the opening. I like the short, the information that we have about Toby. It makes him into a sympathetic figure, sympathetic character, which we didn't get with Jeff at all, at all. And Jeff was kind of a dick. So, site's still going full retard. All right, so read that part. I feel like the site hasn't been updated or worked on in forever. Holy shit. All right. I'm sorry, everyone. Give me just a second here. Let's see. I'm going to refresh the page. Hopefully it doesn't go full retard for a while. Let's see here. Okay. All right. We're back. Sorry about that. All right. So, yet couldn't drive up to the hospital to see Lyra before she died. Toby narrowed his eyes out the window. He was drunk that night, honey. He couldn't drive. Yeah, when is he not? Toby pushed the door open before his mother and stumbled out onto the driveway where he met his father's gaze before looking down at his feet with a stern expression. His mother stepped out behind him and met her husband's eyes before walking around the car. His father opened up his arms, expecting a hug from his wife, but she walked past him and put her arm around Toby's shoulder and started leading him inside. Connie, her husband began in a raspy voice. What, no welcome home hug, huh? She ignored her husband's obnoxious words and walked past him with her son under her arm. Hey, he's 16. He can walk by himself. His father began to follow them in. He's 17. Connie glared back at him before opening the door to the house and stepping inside. Toby, why don't we get you into your room to rest, okay? I'll come get you when dinner is ready. No, I'm 16. I can walk by myself, Toby said sarcastically and glared back at his father before stumbling up the small staircase and turning into his room, where he slammed the door violently. His little room didn't have much in it, just a small bed, a dresser, a window, and his walls had a few picture frames of his family, back when they were a family, before his father became an alcoholic and acted violently toward the rest of his family. Toby remembered when he was arguing with his mom, and he grabbed her by the hair and shoved her to the floor. And when Lyra had tried to break it up, he pushed her and she hit her back on the corner of the kitchen counter. Toby could never forgive him for what he did to his mother and sister. Never. Toby didn't care how much his father beat him down. He couldn't feel it anyway. What he did care about was how he intentionally hurt the only two people he cared about. And when he was waiting in the hospital where his sister took her last breaths, the only one who didn't rush there was his dad. Toby stood by the window and looked out at the street. He could have sworn he saw something out of the corner of his eye, but quickly blamed it on the meds he was on. When dinner time had come and his mother called up to him, Toby came down the stairs and hesitantly sat down at the table across from his father and in between his mother and an empty chair. It was quiet as his parents picked at their food, but Toby refused to eat. Instead, he just watched his dad with a blank stare. His mother caught on to his staring and elbowed him slightly. Toby looked over at her slightly and then down at his uneaten food, which he still didn't touch. Toby laid in. Oh, wait. Okay. So we're now onto the time lapse, I guess. Toby laid in bed. He pulled his covers over his head and stared at the window. He was tired, but there was no way he would fall asleep. He couldn't. There was too much to think about. He had been debating on whether or not to follow his mother's directions and forgive his father, or continued holding a grudge with his boiling hatred. He heard his door creak open, and his mother padded into the room and sat on the bed next to him. She reached over and rubbed his back, which had been turned to her. I know it's hard, Toby. Trust me, I understand. But I promise you it will get better, she said softly. God damn it. Froze up this time. I love this website so much. Right. All right, so it automatically reloaded. And it skipped ahead like a fuck ton. So give me just a second. Let's see. All right. So we're back. Yeah, some website, right? Yeah. So I should probably try to find like a better website to read these on. I bet there probably is another site, maybe like Creepypasta Wiki or something. I don't know. But yeah, this site's really fucking glitchy and shit. When is he going to leave? Toby said with an innocent tone in his shaky voice. Connie let her gaze fall down to her feet. I don't know, honey. He's staying as far as I know, she replied. Toby didn't respond. He just continued to look forward at the wall, holding his damaged arm near his chest. After a few minutes of silence, his mother sighed before she leaned in to kiss his cheek and stood up to walk out of the room. Good night, she said as she closed the door. The hours passed slowly, and Toby couldn't quit tossing and turning. Every time he let his imagination take over, he heard the screeching of tires, the screaming of his sister, and he would uncontrollably jerk in bed. He threw off his cover, lying on his back. He threw off his cover, and lying on his back, he pulled his pillow over his face and cried into it. He could hear his own pitiful weeping. He would have been crying. He would have been screaming and crying if he didn't press his pillow over his face. Wait, what? Controllably. It wouldn't. Okay, that was weirdly worded. After a few seconds, he threw the pillow off his face and sat up, hunched over, holding his head and breathing roughly, tears streaming from his face. Or wait, tears streaming from his eyes. Okay. He couldn't help but cry. He tried to keep it in, but he couldn't stop the whining and whimpering as he sat there shaking. He inhaled before he stood up and walked around his bed to the window and peered out, taking deep breaths, trying to calm down. He rubbed his eyes and looked out at the group of tall pine trees across the street. He stopped suddenly, and his gaze slowly centered on something standing under the streetlight. He heard ringing in his ears and couldn't look away. The figure stood beside the streetlight, about 2 feet shorter than it did. Long arms draped at its sides as it stared up at him with non-existing eyes. So I guess this one has long arms too. Laughing Jack also had long arms. The figure had no facial features to speak of. No eyes, no mouth, no nose, yet it held Toby's hypnotized stare, seemingly peering into his very being. The ring in his ears grew louder and louder each second he stared before suddenly it all went black. The next morning, Toby woke in his bed. He felt different. He wasn't tired at all, and when he consciously woke up, it felt like he had been lying there awake for hours. He had no thoughts flowing through his mind. He sat up slowly and stumbled over to the wall. But when he stood, he automatically felt dizzy. There should be some commas with some of these sentences. This is very, very so I have to keep stopping myself and like pausing and then yeah. So again, it's some more, and again, I get these aren't like professional like authors or anything. I get that they probably don't have like an editor and shit like that. I get that, but it still would probably be good if they had like went back over their stories a bit just to like check on stuff. So a shadow figure. Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. All right. Let's see. He stumbled to the doorway and walked down the stairs. His parents were sitting at the table. His father was tuned into the small TV that sat on the countertop, and his mother was reading the newspaper. She quickly looked over when she felt Toby's fucking goddamn it. Motherfuckers. So yeah, the site fucking automatically just refreshed again. Fucking cock. I do apologize. Let's see. His mother was reading the newspaper. She quickly looked over when she felt Toby's presence looming behind her. Well, good morning, sleepyhead. Oh, fuck. I fucking hate this fucking site. You know what? Give me just a second. I'm gonna see if I can do something here. Because I'm getting fucking tired of this fucking shitty site. All right, I could see. So, all right, the only site that's loading up for me is the creepypasta site. I could see if it works any better. Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. I could see about reading it on here as opposed to on my phone, see if it works any better. Maybe it might. I don't know. Let's see. We'll try that. See how it goes. Because it's just not having it on my phone. It really is not. So, let's see. Scroll back to where I was once again. All right. We'll see how this goes. All right. Get another drink here. All right. Well, good morning, sleepyhead. You've been sleeping forever, she greeted him with a hesitant smile. Toby slowly looked over at the clock and noticed that it was 12:30 p.m. I made you breakfast, but it got cold. I was going to wake you, but I felt you needed sleep. Her expression fell from happy to worried as her son resisted responding to her. Are you all right? Toby over and sat by his father. He felt as if he was on idle and had no control over his actions. He was seeing everything he did, but I didn't wait. But I didn't. Okay, so I'm guessing it was supposed to be it, not I, because it says but I didn't register in his brain properly. I'm guessing it should say but it didn't register in his brain properly. He reached out to his father's arm, but his hand ended up getting slapped. His father turned to him abruptly and pushed his chair over with his foot. Don't touch me, boy, he yelled. His mother stood up. All right, knock that off. That is the last thing we need. The days went by, and things continued on as they were. Connie spent most of her time cleaning the house, and her rude husband spent most of the time ordering her around. It was just like how it used to be before the crash. All right, so the father is a real fucking piece of shit. Fuck. Toby never really left his room. He would sit by his bed and tremble. His mind would wander, but his thoughts changed too fast to be remembered. He would pace around his small room like a caged animal or stare out the window. The unhealthy cycle continued. Connie continued to be pushed around by her husband, being way too submissive to him, and Toby remained in his room. Before he could think twice, he would begin to chew on his hands, tearing the flesh from his fingers. He would gnaw his hands until they bled. When his mother walked in on him while he was doing so, she reacted horribly. She rushed him downstairs and grabbed the first aid kit, wrapping his hand in bandages. Afterward, she demanded that he wouldn't leave her side again. So wait, she doesn't walked in on me. She reacted horribly. So she didn't like take him to the hospital or like get him some help. I feel like if you stumble into that, then like the response would be to actually get them some real help. I don't know, just something. Right. Just checking. Toby isolated himself so much that he grew to hate being around others. His memory grew glitchy as well. He'd start missing memory of minutes, hours, days, and so on. He would begin talking nonsense about things completely unrelated to the conversations he would have. He'd go off about seeing things, sharks in the sink as he washed the dishes, hearing crickets in his pillows, and seeing ghosts outside his bedroom window. His mother grew so anxious about his mental health that she decided it would be good for him to talk to a professional about what he was feeling. Sounds kind of like schizophrenia a little bit. Connie walked Toby into the building, holding his hand and guiding him in. She walked him up to the front desk and began talking to the lady who sat behind it. Mrs. Rogers? The lady asked. Yes, that's me. Connie nodded. We're here to see Dr. Oliver. I'm here with Toby Rogers. Yes, right this way. The lady stood and led them down a long hallway. Toby looked at the framed artwork down the halls and tuned in to the sound of the lady's high heels on the hardwood floor. She opened the door to a room with a table and 2 chairs. If we can get him to sit in here for a few minutes, I'll get the doctor. She smiled and held the door open. Toby stumbled into the room and sat down at the table. He looked over at his mother and the lady before the door slowly shut behind them. He looked around the room before he held up his tightly bandaged hands and began to bite at the bandages to unwrap his hands. But he was interrupted as the door swung open and a young woman in a black and spotted dress with light blonde hair stepped in, holding a clipboard and a pen. So this is the doctor. Toby? She asked with a smile. Toby looked up at her and nodded. Nice to meet you, Toby. My name is Dr. Oliver. She put her hand out for him to shake, but hesitantly pulled away when she noticed his bandaged hands. All right. Oh, she smiled nervously before clearing her throat and sitting in the chair across the table from him. So I'm going to ask you a few questions. Try to answer them as honestly as possible, okay? She placed her clipboard down on the table. Toby nodded slowly and held his restrained hands in his lap. How old are you, Toby? 17, he responded quietly. She wrote that down on the paper that was clipped to the clipboard. What is your full name? Toby Aaron Rogers. When is your birthday? April 28th. Who is your immediate family? Toby paused for a minute before answering her question. My mom, my dad, and he stopped. My sister. I heard about your sister, dear. I'm really sorry. Her expression faded into a sad, pity-filled look. Okay. Toby nodded. Do you remember anything from the crash, Toby? Toby looked away from her. His mind went blank for a moment. He looked down at his lap, and in the surrounding area, he heard a faint ringing sound. His eyes widened, and he froze in place. Toby, the counselor asked. Toby, are you listening? Toby felt a shiver go down his spine until he froze once again, and slowly looked over out the little window through the door, where he saw it. A dark, featureless figure peering in at him. He stared, eyes widened, the ringing growing louder and louder until suddenly the loud voice of the counselor broke his trance. Toby, she yelled. Toby jumped and fell sideways out of his chair and backed up into the corner. Dr. Oliver stood up, holding her clipboard to her chest, a surprised look in her eyes. Toby met her eyes again, his breath hitching as he twitched. That night, Toby lay in bed. His eyes were dazed as he stared straight up at the ceiling. He could feel himself begin to doze off when he heard the scattering of footsteps down his hallway. He sat up and looked out and looked towards the doorway, his door wide open. There was no light. Everything was lit by the wait. There should be a comma. There was no light, comma. Everything was lit by the luminescent blue glow of the moon through his window. Yeah, that's a run-on sentence if I ever seen one. I'm trying not to be too nitpicky about the grammar, but like some of this is just like it's distracting from the story. So, everything was lit by the luminescent blue glow of the moon through his window, leaving it cold lighting. He stood up and slowly made his way toward the doorway when suddenly the door, which previously was wide open, slammed in his face. He gasped and fell back. He was out of breath when he hit the ground, and he began breathing heavily, his eyes wide open. He waited for a few seconds before getting back on his feet. He reached out and grasped the cold door handle with his bandaged hand, and it creaked open. He looked out into the dark hallway and tiptoed out of his room. The window at the end of the hallway lit up the darkness with blue moonlight as he padded his way down. He could hear footsteps rustling around him, and faint giggling followed by the pitter-patter of small feet, which sounded like a child had run in front of him, giggling and running around. The hallway was a lot longer than he remembered. It seemed endless, like the ride home from the hospital. He heard the door creak in front of him. "Mom?" he called in a shaky voice. Suddenly a door slammed behind him, and he jumped and turned around. Behind him, he heard a long, eerie groan that sounded like a croak right in his ear. He turned around as fast as he could and was suddenly face to face with none other than his dead sister. Her eyes were clouded white, her skin pale, the right side of her jaw dangling there by tissue and muscle, glass protruding from her forehead, black blood leaking down her face, her blonde hair pulled up in a ponytail as it always was, and she was wearing her gray t-shirt and athlete shorts, which were dirty and spotted with blood. Her legs were bent in ways that shouldn't be. She stood emitting a long croaking noise only an inch away from Toby's face. Toby yelped and fell back. He started to crawl backward away from her, but he was unable to break the eye contact he held with her blank, dead eyes. He dragged himself backward until he backed up into something. He stopped for a second. Everything was dead silent except for his heavy breathing and crying. He slowly looked up to meet the blank face of a tall, dark figure, the same figure that stood over him now. Behind the tall, dark mask were rows of children looking to range from 3 to 10 years old, their eyes completely black, and dark black blood leaked from their eye sockets. Okay, so there's legions of kids again, or of corrupted kids, I'm assuming. He screamed and stood up as fast as he could, only to be tripped by dark black tendrils that wrapped around his ankle. Dark black tendrils. This entity, or whatever you want to call it, sounds like Slender Man, honestly. Good idea. Something wrong with his brain after the crash. That's my guess. Something like that. Yeah, this entity, it seems very similar to Slender Man. He fell straight on his stomach and got the wind knocked out of him. He tried to scream, but he couldn't make a sound. He wheezed out before it all went black. Toby woke with a start. He screamed out and sat up as fast as he could, completely short of breath. He wheezed out and held his chest with his bandaged hands. It was just a dream. Just a dream. He lay back down on his bed and rolled over on his side. It felt like against weight. It felt like... Wait, what? It felt like against weight had been lifted off his chest as he took in deep breaths. That's how the sentence is written. It felt like against... So it should be, it felt like a weight had been lifted off his chest as he took in deep breaths. This story, it could really do with a lot of editing because there's so many mistakes. Again, this isn't really so much to do with the story. This could really use a lot of editing. He stood up and padded over to his window. He saw nothing. Nobody was out there. No ghosts, no figures, nothing. He heard the rustling and coughing of his father outside the doorway. His door was closed. He walked over and opened it. Looking out into the hallway once again, he padded down the hallway and into the kitchen where he found his dad standing and having a smoke in their living room. Toby waited for a second and watched him from around the corner before a burning feeling started deep in his chest. Deep boiling anger overtook him. He heard little imaginary voices in his head. Do it, do it, do it, they chanted. He turned away and held his arms. He felt like he actually had control over himself, unlike he did for the past few weeks since he got home from the hospital. He actually had complete thoughts for just moments before the chanting of the little voices in his head clouded them. Okay. Give me just 1 second. I gotta get a drink of water. My throat. I'm not becoming dry as fuck. So, all right. So now he's possessed, I guess, or something by this entity. The writing is the issue, not the story. Yeah, pretty much. True, it does a bit. Yeah, it's not a bad story. It needs a lot of editing. I don't know if the original author if he went through and edited it and like did some editing himself, or if he would have had someone do it for him. Like I said, I know that these aren't like professional like New York Times best-selling authors of whatever or stories, but at the very least, it would do some good just to go back and edit a little bit, even if it is just like a story for the creepypasta internet thing. Kill him. He wasn't there. He wasn't there. Kill him. Kill him. They continued on. Toby trembled. No. No. He wasn't going to do it. What? Was he going crazy? No. He won't kill anyone. He can't. He hated his father, but there was no way he was going to kill him. That was it. The last thought he had before he fell into an idle state once again. The influence of the voices in his head was too much. He began to silently walk up behind his father. He reached over the counter to the knife in the case. He gripped it in his hand. He felt the sensation take over his chest. He let out a snicker. He began laughing so hard he had to gasp for breath. His father turned around abruptly before he felt a brute force shove him to the floor. He grunted as the air was knocked out of him. And I mean, Toby is 17 years old, so this will be believable. Whereas Jeff was like 13, so this is way more believable that he could actually like do that to his father. What? He looked up at the boy who stood over him, grasping the kitchen knife in his hand. Toby, what are you doing? He went to sit up and put his arms out in front of him in self-defense, but before he knew it, Toby was on top of him. He went to grab his neck, but his father reached out and blocked his hand by grabbing onto his wrist. Stop! Get off of me, you little fucker! He yelled, and with his other hand, he threw an off-center punch towards Toby's shoulder, but he didn't stop. The look in Toby's eyes was not sane. It looked as if a demon had taken control of him. That's pretty much the idea. He yelled back and went to stab the knife into his father's chest. But his father blocked him and grabbed onto his wrist once again. He went to shove him back, but Toby kicked his feet out in front of him and landed a hard blow straight to his father's face. His father recoiled and pulled his arms away to cuff his face. Wait, to cuff his face? To cover his face? But Toby got back up and drove the knife straight into his shoulder. His father let out a loud cry and went to pull the knife out. But before he could, Toby threw his fist straight into his face. He began to pound his fist into his head, laughing and wheezing. He cracked his neck and grabbed the knife and ripped it out of his father's shoulder. He drove it deep into his dad's chest and repeatedly stabbed his torso, blood spilling out and getting splattered everywhere. He didn't stop until his father's body went still. He threw the knife over to the side and leaned over his body, coughing and panting. He stared at his father's smashed-in face and sat there twitching until a loud scream broke the silence. He looked over to see his mother standing a few feet away, covering her mouth, tears streaming down her face. "Toby!" she screamed. "Why did you do that?" she cried. "Why?" she screamed. Toby stood up and began to back away from his father's bloody corpse. He began to back out of the kitchen. He looked down at the blood-soaked bandages on his hands and looked up at his mother one last time before he turned and ran out of the house. He ran to the garage and slammed his hand against the control panel on the wall and pushed the button to open the garage door. Before he ran out, he noticed his father's hatchets, which had been hanging on the tool rack above a table full of jars filled to the brim with old rusted nails and screws. One of the hatchets was new. It had a bright orange handle and a shiny blade, and the other was old with a wooden handle and an old, dull blade. He grabbed both and looked down at the table, and he saw a box of matches, and under the table was a red gasoline tank. He held both of the hatchets in one hand and grabbed 2 matches and gasoline before running out of the garage, down the driveway, and up the street. As he approached the street light that he could see out his own bedroom window, he heard police sirens in the distance. He turned around and the red and blue flashing lights came rushing down the street. Toby stood for a second before pulling open the cap on the gasoline tank and ran down the street, spilling gasoline all over the street after him. He turned and ran into the trees. He poured the last bit of gasoline out before he reached into his pocket and pulled out a match. He struck it against the box and immediately dropped it. In an instant, flames burst around him. The fire caught on the trees and bushes around him, and before he knew it, he was surrounded by fire. The silhouettes of police cars were visible through the flames as he backed away into the forest around him. He looked around, but his vision was blurred. His heart was pounding, and he closed his eyes for a moment. This was it. This was the end. Toby felt a hand on his shoulder. He opened his eyes and looked over to see a large white hand with long, bony fingers resting on his shoulder. He followed the arm that was attached to the hand up to a dark, towering figure. It appeared to be wearing a dark black suit, and its face was completely blank. Wait, a dark black suit and its face was completely... So, that's basically Slender Man, right? Because it's a face, a completely blank face, black suit. This sounds like Slender Man. It towered over Toby's small frame as it looked down on him. Tendrils reached out from its back. Before Toby knew it, his vision blurred and he heard the sound of ringing in his ears. Everything went blank. This was it. That was the end. That was how Toby Rogers died. A few weeks later, Connie sat in her sister's kitchen. His sister, Lori, sat next to her drinking a cup of coffee. Her sister. Not his, her sister. That's how it's written, though. About 3 weeks ago, Connie had lost her husband and her son. And a few weeks before, she had lost her daughter to a car crash. Since then, she had moved in with her sister. The police were keeping her busy. They had just finished cleaning up the case, and the story had been released 2 weeks ago. The focus of the world seemed to have shifted to completely new stories. Lori switched the TV on to a news broadcast. On the TV, the news reporter began introducing the new headline. Let's see. Yeah, 17-year-old boy could take a full-grown man down, but a little boy, no chance. Yeah. Why did he grab 2 hatchets? I don't know. I'm wondering that myself. Why did he grab the? Maybe we'll get to that here in a second. Slender Man, yeah. So I mean, is this supposed to be Slender Man? Is that the idea here? Unless I'm just fucking completely stupid and don't realize that maybe this story is the origin of Slender Man, or is how Slender Man came to be. But if not, then this entity is just like Slender Man. So let's see. On the TV, the news reporter began introducing the news headline. We have breaking news. Last night, there have been reported the murder of 4 individuals. There are no suspects yet, but the victims were a group of middle school kids who had been out in the woods late last night. The kids have been bludgeoned and stabbed to death. The investigators have discovered a weapon at the crime scene. It appears to be an old, dull blade hatchet, as you can see here. The picture changed to show snapshots of the weapon exactly as it was left at the crime scene. Investigators have pulled the name of a possible subs. I'm sorry, excuse me. Investigators have pulled the name of a possible suspect, Toby Rogers, a 17-year-old boy who stabbed his father to death a few weeks ago and tried to cover up his escape by setting a fire in the streets and forest area around the neighborhood. Although they believe the young boy had died in the fire, investigators suspect Rogers might still be alive, due to the fact that his body was never found. Is that it? Oh, shit. Okay. That's it. Okay. Yeah, I guess that's the end. So, yeah, definitely interesting ending. Uh, yeah, I like the ending. Uh, I don't know. I would say I like the story. Again, it's kind of the same thing with Laughing Jack. And again, I know that these stories aren't meant to be fucking novels and shit, but I don't know. I would have preferred like more build up, I guess. Just a little bit more. I'm not like a fuck ton. I'm not saying it has to be like a fucking Stephen King novel or anything, um, but I mean, aside from that though, it was a pretty decent little story. Uh, it definitely needs editing because a lot of the grammatical errors definitely got in the way at a certain point. But that's more the writing, not the story. Left the ending open. Yeah, I don't. Was there like a? I wonder if there was like a sequel or something, or like another Ticci Toby story. Let's see. Is there a sequel to? Because now I'm actually kind of curious if there was actually like a follow up story. The highly sequel to Ticci Toby Clockwork. Okay. Wait, what? Oh wait, no, never mind. That's pretty sure that's fucking fan fiction. Let's see. Okay, so there is. So that was Slender Man. So that meant to be like a fucking whatchamacallit, like a what's the word for it? Like a cameo appearance or something? Not a cameo appearance, but I don't know. That I was wondering about that. So I guess that was Slender Man, like actually Slender Man, not just an entity that was very like Slender Man. Um. So let's see. Yeah. So I guess as far as I know, that was it. There wasn't like a follow up to the Ticci Toby story, but yeah, it wasn't bad. Uh. Yeah, it was all right. I liked Toby. I thought he was a sympathetic main character. The parents were I mean they were fine for what they were. The father was kind of just a kind of an asshole, just kind of a you know alcoholic asshole, abusive father. But I mean, it was a decent little story. So I'm wondering which one I should do for the next stream because I did Ticci Toby, realistic characters. Yeah. Let's say I did Ticci Toby, Laughing Jack. What would be another one? There's a bunch out there. I might just stick to doing like more well-known ones for now, and then maybe move into like more like lesser-known stories. Um, I know that No End House is a really big one. That's a really good one. I remember that was probably one of my favorite creepypastas from back in the day, if I had to pick a favorite. And then I think there's one called Clockwork, but I heard that one was kind of shitty. Maybe I'll do that one just like I did with Jeff the Killer, just to like laugh at it and stuff. But we'll definitely have to update the title because I didn't plan on reading two creepypastas in one live stream, so definitely have to do that. So we apparently have three people. So Scotty, I know that you're here. Who else is still around at this point? Just out of curiosity. Been a good stream. I appreciate it. Yeah, the problem with I think the only thing with reading two creepypastas in a row, like it was fun. Like I was glad to do it. But I think the problem is that after reading aloud for so long, my mouth starts to get like really dry, and my throat too. Like even right now, my throat and mouth are just like dry as all fuck. Hey Crusader, thanks for stopping by. I don't know how long you've been here, but I basically did a reading of Laughing Jack and Ticci Toby creepypastas, and just kind of went over them, like the same thing I did with Jeff the Killer in the last stream. And now we're just chilling. So I know Gage was here earlier. I don't know if he's still around or not. I know one of these days, because I know you have to download like software, I think, for it. And Zach can probably show me how to do it. But yeah, like get a way to like bring people in here and like talk and hang out and stuff. Imagine Jeffy the Killer. That would be a more fitting title for the story than Jeff the Killer because, you know, the original story is just so silly. It's just so silly and badly written and in every way. Yeah, Jeffy the Killer. Or do like a gender bent version of Jeff the Killer. Like, well, I guess there kind of is. There's Jane the Killer, but that's not really a gender bent. It's just kind of like another character. Jasmine the Killer. Gene the Killer. I'm reading one. Let's see. I'm reading When You're Smiling by D.A. Really good book. It's the movie Halloween, but with a female killer. Really good book. Okay. That sounds pretty interesting. I'll actually look that up right now and add it to my list. I'll have to track that one down at some point. But yeah, I think that looking it up on the Chromebook that I have as opposed to my phone worked a little bit better because again, like I think it's too much for my phone to handle, honestly. Because the creepypasta site is so fucking laggy and glitchy and just not a well-run site. Unfortunately, that's the only place that I can really find these creepypastas to read them from, but it seems to work better on my Chrome thing, so just do that from now on. Oh, Gage, you're still here. All right, cool. So it's when you're smiling. Yeah, I'll have to get that one at some point because I've got so many books that I'm like that I have to read or that I'm planning to read. It's insane. Uh, I I have a problem. I have a problem. I have a big problem. But is that the right? Is it? Wait, I typed it in just now. I didn't find it. Maybe I spelled it wrong. But oh, I'll try to find it later. But yeah, I think I don't know between Laughing Jack and Tiki Toby. I think because Tiki Toby is definitely the more I would say expansive of the two. It's longer, so it has more time to like flesh out, especially like Toby in the story. So I guess I would rank Tiki Toby like slightly above Laughing Jack. Um, and Laughing Jack was a good enough story, a good little story for what it was. I'll have to read the full lore that's been written for Laughing Jack at some point. But surprised our friend hasn't been dropping by as of late. Funny story. So today at work, the song, um, the Tina Turner song that he used in his music video, "Simply the Best." It it came on, and for fuck's sake, I the first thing that popped into my head when I heard the song come on is fucking Jacob Studman's fucking stupid ass fucking music video or whatever the fuck. Like forever has ruined that song for me. Like Tina Turner's rolling in her fucking grave because of that video. Tiki Toby is better than Jeff the Killer, Laughing Jack. Yeah, I think I would. I think I would agree. Um, I think based off of like the main character alone, like as far as the strength of the main character, I'd definitely rank it above. Certainly Jeff the Killer, of course, and then probably above Laughing Jack as well. Like the main character in Laughing Jack was good enough. She was likable enough, but I think Toby was the best developed character all around in terms of the three stories. All right, Scotty, I'll see you. I'll see you later. Thanks for dropping by. But yeah, that song came on and just fucking ruined that song forever for me. Crusader, you're still here? All right, that's cool. Crusader, you I know that you watch a lot of Zach streams, right? Just out of curiosity. Because I think that's how you found my channel. Or maybe it's I don't know. Sometimes I lose track. Out of all the creepypastas you've read, Tiki Toby's the best, in my opinion. Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. Like again, like just Jeff the Killer is such a fucking low bar. So it's almost insulting to even compare. But yeah, Laughing Jack is kind of just in the middle there. I still think that my favorite creepypasta, if I had to choose one, would be No End House. Ben Drowned is also a pretty good one. Uh, there was also this other like smaller story. It's called Colorado Fishing Trip, but that was a really good one too. But yeah, I think No End House would be that's a pretty long story. So if I did a stream on that one, it would be like a single stream just on that story alone. Sometimes I tend to watch Zach's videos and enter his live streams from time to time. Okay, that's cool. I didn't know because I didn't know if you'd found him first or found me first, and that's how you, or maybe you found like Gage first or something. And obviously, me and Zach stream about very different things, so very different streams, very different on-air personalities. But yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I might. I don't know if I want to read like a shitty creepypasta just to laugh at it, or maybe what I'll do is I'll read a shitty creepypasta and then read like an actual good creepypasta in the same stream, just to like compare and contrast, which would probably be pretty cool. I felt that both stories that I read, like Laughing Jack and Ticci Toby, they're both decent stories. Though Ticci Toby is certainly like higher above Laughing Jack. But it would be cool to read just like a really bad creepypasta and then like a really good one. And then just like to show like just the difference, the sheer difference in quality and stuff. But yeah. Well, I think that that might be it for this one. I might just go ahead and end it here in a minute. But yeah, no, I appreciate everyone who popped on. I appreciate joining in, even if it was only for a few minutes or for a few minutes here and there. I enjoy doing these streams. It's a shame that I had to private all those Tex Watson book readings because I was looking forward to doing that, especially in a live format. But it is what it is. Technically, I could I guess I don't know if I could unlist them or not, but I don't know. Sorry that I didn't arrive sooner. No worries, Crusader. You're fine. You dropped by. That's what counts. But yeah, so I think I'll go ahead and end this. But yeah, again, thanks everyone for joining. Crusader, thanks for dropping by. Squidward Suicide. Oh, I could do Squidward Suicide. Yeah, I'll do that one next. Yeah, I remember that one. I think that was one of the first ones that I actually ever read. So that'd be a good one to do. I don't remember the first ever creepypasta that I read or that I heard about. Normal porn for normal people. Yeah, I know that one too. Actually, that might have been the first one that I read or heard about. But yeah, no, I'll do both of those. Those are both pretty well known creepypastas, which I think I want to stick to for now. So I think those are two that I might do here pretty soon. Definitely. I'll probably try to start scheduling these streams like more in advance, maybe. We'll see. Sometimes I just do these very like spontaneously because it's hard to predict like what's going to happen on certain days and stuff. But yeah. So I think I will go ahead and end it here. I've said that like multiple times already, but yeah. So once again, thanks for everyone who joined, who stopped by. I appreciate it. Thanks for interacting with the stream. And I'll be back very, very soon. Tell Zach the Celtics guy that I said hello. LOL. I will, Crusader. Will do. Definitely will. Appreciate it. So that is it. Peace to everyone. Have a good day or evening, whatever time of day it is where you're at. And I will catch you guys later.